It comes from Bose, it's £149, and I'm not saying it's the most overpriced speaker there's ever been. Wow. What a turn up. One of the big boys coming out with a speaker that I can't say, in today's market, how do you charge those prices? Extremely no, it's not extremely priced, but it ain't cheap, I'll give you that. So, why do you like it, Alan? I'll tell you why. It's very compact. In case you hadn't noticed, that's quite a slim speaker. I would have liked something a bit chunkier, get a bit more bass, maybe put a second driver in there. So what we got? We got a woofer, a passive radiator. Don't get carried away because there's two passive radiators. Passive radiators are sized to the woofer or woofers because they work on the air pressure of the woofers and other drivers in that speaker. So surface area is what's going to count. Don't get carried away. If it's got 48 passive radiators or one, the size overall surface area will have to be sized to the woofers. Got one woofer. No, it's a bit mono. It is mono. It's obviously mono, but you know what? That to me, it's not a deal breaker because it sounds reasonable. It doesn't overly sound mono to me. Of course, it is mono. So what you're talking about, Al? Well, what I'm saying is, the first things that hit your ear is not, oh, it's so narrow. I've got to turn up and make it explode out of the box. No, it sounds okay. So limitations. What are they, Al? Well, it doesn't go that loud. Do you know why it doesn't go that loud? Because it hangs on to its bass. You go to maximum volume, still trying to hang on to bass. We've got used to speakers that, oh, let's tell them we go really, really loud, and what we'll do is we'll cut all the bass, we'll just go mids and highs, and it'll sound really loud, but we haven't really got any bass, but don't tell them we cut all the bass. Not really doing that with the Bose, and a bit of a surprise to me, but hey-ho, it's the Bose warm overall sound signature. So I do like it. It's £149. There are other options. Well, now you've been banging on about the Bogasing M4, about 50, well, what is it now? It was about 70 quid when it first came out in the UK. You can now get it for 55 quid. 55 quid, that's a reasonable buy. Or $49. How does that work? Less in dollars than pounds, and it should be the other way around. And of course, for a long time, my £50 champion. So I never really declared Bogasing M4 as a champion. A, because it was a bit more pricey, and also because, well, it's good value for the bass, but look at the difference in size. What are the differences in sizes, Al? Well, I would tell you Bogasing M4 is 731 grams compared to the Boost, the Soundcore Boost upgraded. I call it version 2, 624. So that's weighs a little bit less, but in terms of how much room will that take up in a backpack, and by the way, that is 587 grams. It's the lightest speaker on this table because sometimes it's not about weight, it's about how many can you get in a backpack. So the volume is what counts. Bogasing M4, you're going to get the fewest number in. 1,008 centimeters cubed compared to just 741 centimeters cubed for the Boost, and a similar 720 centimeters cubed for the Bose. So in terms of how much volume they will displace, about the same in a ruckpack. But you're going to be cut down to how many you can get in. So overall, because of the size and the bass and everything else, as a package, I still declare this my £50 champion Soundcore version 2, not version 1. But this is good value at around 50 quid. If you get it for around 50 quid, $50, then I think it's good value. But you'll have to check out my original video because there are, as with all these speakers, there's things that are good and there's things that are bad. And you're going to have to mess around with the EQ to make the most of the bass. So let's get on with it. The point of this is £149. Well, you're saying it's quite good, but we want to know, you get one for £149, or you could get two playing them in stereo for 100 quid and still have 50 quid over. And same thing with the Bogasing M4. Now, I don't have two Bogasing M4s, and I'm just going to do a like for like, because this is about ultimate travel speaker. And that means just traveling light, traveling with one speaker. Of course, it's going to be a bit different. And I'd have to double me 150 quid to get a second Flex, but I am tempted to do just that. So what I'm going to do is compare these speakers around 65% volume. So that's midway between the guys who want to play it a bit quieter and the guys who play it a bit louder, just to suit everyone, keep things simple. Straight off, around 65%. Remember, volume matched before I start any normalizing for the little bit of differences that are left. Let's have a listen. Two £50, $50 speakers versus a Bose. It's come from the big brand. It's 150 quid, and Alan says it's not even overpriced. Bloody hell, well, let's have a listen.
I wish I could go back in time At least you know that you are fine. But my world has fallen apart. I need to fix my broken heart. Don't wanna miss you anymore. Just wanna hold you like before. Baby, any sign could save my life, 'cause I still keep falling down. I remember when we felt like we were way too young to die. Before you left, it was just you and I, you and me only. Need you with me only. But now I feel way too damn lonely. I was hoping to see you in sleep, find you in my dreams, a dream of you and me. But all I see is darkness, I can't sleep. My memories are fading, so empty, but at least I got my fantasy. You are mine, I was yours, till the world ends. That was our plan, but our world has fallen apart, and I can't fix it without you. Maybe I just need more time to leave the past behind me. I need to find a way to fix myself from missing what I've lost. We felt like we were way too young to die. Before you left, it was just you and I, you and me only. Need you with me only. But now I feel way too damn lonely. I was hoping to see you in sleep, find you in my dreams, a dream of you and me. But all I see is darkness, I can't sleep. My memories are fading, so empty, but at least I got my fantasy.
So the Soundlink Flex, even against two speakers I have previously talked about as being bass heavy, has the biggest bass. When you volume match them, the Soundcore Boost, my £50 Best Buy, you can see here with my tuning, but with my tuning to make it a bit clearer, it's mids dominant. We used to say it was bass dominant, but against the Bogasing M4, which has decent deep bass, again for its price, Soundlink Flex dominates the bass all the way from upper bass down to the 60 hertz mark. It's only rolling off once you hit past 60 hertz as you hit into the deeper end of the bass. But then on all three speakers, that's rolled off anyway. But it is the Bogasing M4 from 60 hertz down that has the strongest deep bass. The M4 and the Flex in some ways having similar tuning. You can see the white and the yellow lines kind of shadowing themselves, except that 2.5 kilohertz, we got the bigger peak on the M4, and then the Flex has its peak just below 9 kilohertz in the high end, and the M4 around 11-12 kilohertz. So, one of the reasons I don't declare the Bogasing M4, amongst other reasons, world champion at £50, if they were both £50, albeit I've said it's a lot bigger, because there are things about it that's obviously very budget. Listening, remember, stereo, mono, but the way that delivers its stereo sound, there is a shimmer to it, which you may or may not like, but that means it's not that focused. The thing about the M4 is, delivers a nice wallop in the bass. That's why I declare it. One you should consider around 50 quid, but of course, I still say Anker Boost, pound for not a pound for pound mode champion. It's confusing a lot of you out there. You say, what's £200 pound for pound? Can they have £1 for pound? Pound for pound means taking all weights into consideration, and if you adjusted for weight, who would be the world champion? Just like it used to be Money Mayweather, and right now it still remains the Motion Boom. But for a travel speaker, who would be my champion? Well, it can't be my £50 champion, can it? But however, thankfully, I personally, you may not be agreeing with me, I'm hearing why that's 150 quid and they're 50 quid. It is producing the best bass on the table, all things equaled. So when loudness matched to your ears, like for like, it can produce the most bass, yet it weighs the least, and it also takes up the least space in your rucksack. It is a very mono sound compared to the two stereo speakers, but as I said, stereo quite well focused on the upgraded Boost, but not that focused on the M4. Don't judge them as though you're an audiophile. Don't pretend you're an audiophile and you're going to buy these speakers. I know you're probably thinking, well, I know sound and I know what. Just remember, this is a million miles from a proper hi-fi setup, and you could call yourself an audiophile and you're hearing a pin drop even when the drums are going, because I look at the soundstage, I heard that come from over there. You can't do that with these speakers. But let's not get carried away with that. The biggest, warmest bass is the Flex. It surprised me against two speakers that I've considered right up there. Even when I played them against bigger speakers, well, more expensive speakers, the bass they produce, and know where I'm coming from. I like a warm sound. I like a decent bass. I don't like upper bass. I like, say my tummy, it's going along the floor. Low end, deeper bass. That's what I like, a warm sound. Not everybody likes that. Remember, if you go outdoors, it might not be the greatest balance. You probably want a bit more upper bass. But for indoor listen, on these type of speakers, impressive, but now sounding bass light against the Flex. I have tuned the mids a bit high on the upgraded Boost, because that's the best way for me and my ears to get some clarity out of it. But it does make it a bit overly mids heavy compared to these other two speakers. I think the best balance is on the Flex, and it only really starts to lose out below 60 hertz. So it's got a really nice upper and mid bass. You will probably hear that as upper bass, but deeper bass is there. Well, when you talk about these speakers, deeper bass, is the mid bass. After it's rolled off at 60 hertz, yeah, these two speakers will come into their own, and you may or may not actually be able to hear that over the rest of the track. I declare this a win for the £150 speaker, but of course still, if it's about, I've only got £100 in my pocket, or even I've got £150 in my pocket, I just want the best sound out, I don't care about Trump, I want the best sound for my money. Well, you would get two Boosts, or you would get, well, I wouldn't say that. It's got a particular nature to its sound, but it's great value if you like a big old bass. But two of those may well trump it. It's already going deeper than the Flex, and we get that much more in the bass when we go to two of them, and it's already deeper, which is the main thing. Remember, add more of the same speaker, you won't go deeper, but you go louder. So two of them may trump it, but it's going to take up a lot more space if you're traveling. But if it's about the budget, then I can't argue. Then that's probably still the best value. But if I just want my ears and I don't know the price, I would say the Flex. But then if I had two of those for £100 and I'm just listening, I'm probably, almost certainly, and with some tinkering with the EQ, probably going to like that. Hopefully you're getting enough information to make up your mind yourself. But the takeaway even at this point is, for 150 quid, I think it's doing a decent job. But it's not an audiophile's heaven. So it's not going to have the greatest of highs. There is a bit of a lacking in the mids, but what it does well, and that's having a nice, warm, presentable, enjoyable, with almost all tracks sound. What's the ultimate headroom? Will that change everything? 100% volume.
Lately I've been feeling like I hate me, dealing with the shit that keeps me awake. Things have gotten hazy. If only I could find an easy escape. It's all a mess, what I've got inside. I make up my mind, but I'm terrified. Everything about it scares me. Can't get these voices out of my head. I've got monsters under my bed. I don't think I'm alright. My friends tell me that I'll be fine. I'm can't get these voices out of my head. I've got monsters under my bed. I can't stop living in a cycle. Find myself in denial again. Check my vitals, so afraid of something final. I regret I've gone insane. Can you save me now? I decide, but I don't know how. Everything about it scares me. Can't get these voices Get out of my head, I've got monsters under my bed.
Maximum volume, it is indeed the M4 that goes the loudest, but it's an absolute mess. Look at that yellow line, look at those peaks, 3 kilohertz, 11 kilohertz. That's what makes it sound so screechy with that big, big dip in the mids. So we've got the biggest dip in the mids and the biggest peaks, and yet the bass is only in line with the Flex. So the Flex, much the better listen, much the smoother listen, although it doesn't go as loud because of those peaks on the M4. And the Boost is the quietest of the bunch. Similar tuning to the Flex in terms of its mids and highs, except that it's the Flex that dominates the Boost in terms of the bass. The Boost only starts catching up with the Soundlink Flex in terms of bass once you start approaching the 60 hertz mark, which of course it's completely rolled off, you're not going to hear it. But while none of them are the best listen at maximum volume, as is common with these type of Bluetooth speakers, it is the Flex that's probably the most listenable. The highs on the M4 are just killing it for me. 3 dB up on the Flex. It has the same level of bass. And when you add in the scoop, 250 hertz to just over a kilohertz, that doesn't add up well. Just to point out, just to remember, when it's all about, I did mention right at the beginning, the EQs you use on the M4. So weirdly, when you switch it on, and weirdly, default mode is the very V-shaped screechy mode, but that probably works best at low volumes. The balance mode is actually the one they call the bass mode. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But to get there, you're going to have to go 2 presses each time to get to the green light, and that's the balance mode. That's the one I use at 66%. That's the one I listen to most of the time. But when it comes to ultimate volume, you're going to have to switch it back, if it's about volume, to the default mode. But what happens when you do that, default mode becomes an absolute screech fest. It's not great, but hey, if it's just about making sure the bloke in the room next to you, you've annoyed you for years, and make sure he can hear your speaker, you'll go for that. But if there's an audio file next door, he's going to say, wow, that's the worst speaker I've ever heard. It's awful, but it goes the loudest, which leaves us with the Flex and the Soundcore Boost. And there's not a million miles between them. It's in some ways quite similar now at maximum volume. However, the differences are you've got the bass. You've got more bass on the Flex. It's retaining its warm sound. And indeed, the vocals are better. I'm not saying that either of these, any of these speakers, it's rare to get a speaker, and that's a good listen at maximum volume. It's still a better listen than many speakers that I hear, because it hangs on to its bass without reducing bass, just to push those highs and those mids and make it a screech fest. Some people think that's brilliant, and if you live your life in a tent outdoors, you may love it. But here, yet again, at a maximum volume, remember, 3 times the price. That is 3 times the price of either of those 2 speakers. You could get 2 of those, have enough over for a third, and it's still the same as that Flex. But if it's just about having a listen and a travel compact speaker, the Flex wins again for me. So, what are the other differences between these 3 speakers that you did ask for? We talked about price. I think maybe 20 watts. That's certainly 20 watts. They claim 40 watts, but remember, is it peak, is it RMS, or is it just a number they decided to put on the paper? It doesn't really matter. How loud does it go? Well, it's a screech fest. They're probably all about a 20 watt speaker, all SBC, all Bluetooth 5, because they're all modern. Oh, they're not all Bluetooth 5. The £149 speaker that's just come out at the end of 2021 is Bluetooth 4.2. Audio stereo pairing, all have USB-C connections only, and that may be the reason to get the Bogasing M4. Only the Bogasing M4 has auxiliary input. You can use, amazingly, the Soundcore Boost as a power bank. If you're in a bind and you need to charge your phone or whatever, you can use the Boost. You can't do that with the other 2 speakers. We talked about weight, we talked about volume. All of these float. They will all float, but only the Bogasing M4 will float with the drivers up. So it's the only one you can carry on listening to. It's the only one you would deliberately leave lying on the top of a pool. Another reason why, to get a cheaper speaker, just in case it damages it. Not that it should, because it is IPX7, but the other 2 will, well, that floats that way. Don't ask me why, but of course you could put some armbands under it, or tie them to it, and it would float then anyway. In terms of those drivers, it's quite interesting. We do have the biggest driver on the Soundcore Flex at 54 centimeters compared to the 45 centimeters, but there's 2 of them, 2 at 45 centimeters, 2 at 45 millimeters. sorry, and 154 millimeters. Means the surface area obviously is going to be great on those, which again makes it even more impressive that it's still holding up against these speakers, albeit for 150 quid at maximum volume. Just one big passive radio on the back, and a fake one. It's a fake one on the front. I know you're still catching you out. Oh no, I can say passive radio. No, they've got a metal grille that's shaped to look like a passive radio in the front, but it isn't. Only the Flex, for me, is usable for streaming YouTube on my phone. 50 milliseconds is brilliant. That's as good as it gets. 150 milliseconds for the other two is not good. My cut off 80 milliseconds. There's an app for the Soundcore Boost. You can get into the app and you can mess around with the EQ, and it's a very good graphic equalizer. You can go into the app for the Bose, but there's not much point because you can do everything without using the app, and indeed no EQ, but no app at all with the Bogasing M4. Maybe that's where they saved a few quid. So that's my roundup. So I'm maintaining good value speaker, but of course it's going to depend on your budget and how, just how much. If it's a hard spend, that's all I've got in the world, 150 quid, and then it's gone, and there's never be able to spend anything else. So then, is that good value to you? But if you've got 40 million quid, you're going to get that. You're not even going to think about getting the other two, are you? So those are the things to consider. Hope you got something out of this video, and I hope to see you in another video.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, guess I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.